I do want to play this video real quick that I came across the other day because I think that there will be some common. Travers can't help himself. He's just.
Travers.
We have an Irish.
We have a feisty
troll.
We have a feisty Irish troll.
But somebody that we're big supporters of is Abby Martin and her husband, Mike Preisner. They are both, he's also a veteran and very much against the bullshit within the anti-war, within the pro-war movement that exists in this country. Obviously, they're on the left, but I think that there's a lot of common ground here. So this is an important clip that I just came across the other night, and we'll comment on it.
NATO emerged in the wake of some of the most turbulent events in human history. The world was reeling from a global war. The United States, on the other hand, emerged economically stronger, and after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, shielded by the terrible power of the atom. It moved quickly to apply its newfound power to a project of global hegemony. Preponderant power must be the object of U.S. policy, a State Department memo said in 1947. NATO was a critical piece of that puzzle. Founded in 1949 with the explicit mission of deterring Soviet expansionism and establishing a permanent North American presence on the continent. Through initiatives like Operation Gladio, the United States funded what it called stay-behind operations across the continent, cultivating a clandestine paramilitary network ready to strike at and disable the rising popular movements sweeping Europe. From 1948 onward.
All right, what do you know? I mean, like, I don't know this, like the details of this.
I cannot believe, like, if I had to place a bet before I came on here of topics that we would not talk about, Gladio would probably have been close to the top of that list. Wow. Operation Gladio has been making a lot of waves over the last few weeks with the SBUs, the stay behind units, and everything else. And if you haven't dug into Operation Gladio, wow.
What is that? This is the first time I'm hearing of what this is. So, but I do know that Abby is very thorough. I know that.
So Gladio is essentially a CIA operation, CIA, intelligence operation. I don't want to, attribute it exclusively to the CIA.
Don't worry, but the CIA is already watching Jen, so
it doesn't matter.
Go on. That going on.
They're watching you too.
Yeah, that's true.
It's an intelligence operation that is essentially disruptors in certain countries. So in other words, like if you look at the Maidan revolution that took place in 2014 or the Orange Revolution that took place in, I think, 2004, I believe, might have been 2008, in Ukraine, that was a lot of Gladio. If you look at Italy when they kicked out the well, not kicked out, but they thwarted the communists in Italy, in Hungary, just all over the place. Anytime you see some sort of an uprising and a color revolution taking place, it's like John Bolton said on Jake Tapper. He said, I've never participated in a coup in the United States, but I've done coups around the world. Yeah, and so I have a woman that's a listener to one of our shows and came on last week to talk about Gladio, and she's been doing research on this like ad nauseum. Former colonel in the Air Force, and she was telling us, like, when you see like the drug trade, if you go back and look at the relationship between Operation Gladio and Luciano in the mafia up in New York, and you look at the financing apparatus that was used for these stay-behind units throughout the world, and all of it comes back to Gladio, the mafia, the drug trade, all of it. It's all funding to continue, this Operation Gladio. If you haven't yet, dive into Gladio, man. That's all I could say.
Okay, so you weren't laughing at Abby Martin.
I was laughing because I didn't expect to hear that come up on this podcast at all.
We're very versatile here. We're very versatile.
We'll continue.
The CIA funneled tens of millions of dollars to extremist right-wing groups in Italy alone. These groups were responsible for scores of deadly terrorist attacks that massacred hundreds, many of which were blamed on the left. These, according to a 2000 parliamentary commission in Italy, were part of a strategy of tension that terrorized people into abandoning their loyalties to the rising communist and socialist movements. intended in particular to stop the Italian Communist Party, and to a certain degree also the Italian Socialist Party, from reaching executive power in the country. NATO insists that it's a guarantor of...
So it just facilitates fascism.
Yeah. I don't know about facilitates fascism quite as much as tries to thwart communism.
Well, and socialism. And if you're thwarting the left like that, then something else is coming up. So it's kind of like, this is what's happening. So, I mean, I knew that this was stuff that went on. I just didn't know it had an actual name and written mission.
Yeah.
See, but now you start to get into, an issue of fascism versus communism versus socialism and versus capitalism. You got to throw capitalism in there. When in reality, the conversation that should be heard around Gladio is United States imperialism. That should be the takeaway from Gladio.
For sure.
Okay. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Absolutely. When I hear people that are going out of their way to stifle the populists, well, then you're putting in authoritarianism. You're putting in something to keep that down. And when the corporate mashes with the authoritarianism, there's your fascism.
Brian, you support a nation's right to self-determination, right? If they choose to be, one form of government, then that's their choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Go. All right, here we go.
Sovereignty above all.
But we don't have to look far back to find its fingerprints in attempts to crush popular aspirations for sovereignty. Fighting for liberation from Portuguese colonialism, the Bissau-Guinean revolutionary Amilcar Cabral described the weapons that flowed into Africa through the alliance, supporting the Salazar regime's wars against the people of Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, and Cabo Verde. NATO is the USA. We can't let the Soviets clutch victory from the jaws of defeat, George H.W. Bush told Germany's Helmut Kohl in 1990. Later that year, he told France's François Mitterrand that no organization would replace NATO as the guarantor of Western security and stability. In this way, Bush set the stage for NATO expansion, against the so-called ironclad guarantees promised by U.S. Secretary of State James Baker to Soviet Foreign Minister Eduard Shevardnadze in Moscow in 1990 that NATO's forces would not move eastward of the...
Not one
inch. How's that working out?
Not 1 inch. Now we've got 5 NATO allies on Russia's border, and we're about to add... Stoltenberg said we're going to add Ukraine. Hopefully we don't.
Oh, God, I can't even...
So you're technically what you think of is on the right, and I'm on the left, and we both agree that we have no place in being there.
Nope, none whatsoever. I am avidly against the war in Ukraine. I'm avidly against the war between Israel and Gaza. I'm avidly against any war, especially when, if you look around at everything that's gone on, it's the United States that has been the instigators behind all of this. You go back to Ukraine with the Maidan Revolution, Victoria Nuland, and Yatsenyuk, over in Ukraine, chasing out not Poroshenko, but Yanukovych, chasing him out, unconstitutionally removing him, trying to assassinate him using your Gladio operatives, trying to assassinate him. If Yanukovych did not decide to take his helicopter instead of his motorcade, he would be dead, and it would have been an assassination, and it would have been at the hands of the CIA. New York Times puts out the article, a couple weeks ago about the SBU and GUR and the CIA involvement over there, which, by the way, is a duplicate of the Washington Post article from October of 2023, both times which came immediately following a vote against sending money to Ukraine, almost as if, somebody in Ukraine is kind of giving a shot over the bow, like, hey, we'll expose what you guys are actually doing over here. Victoria Nuland coming out and talking about the biolabs over there, 46 biolabs in Ukraine, before Rubio shut her up and assured us that it would only be Russians that would ever use bioweapons. Russia has not been a threat to the United States in decades. All right. Russia spends $75 billion a year on their defense. We spend $750 billion. Well, actually, now it's over $850 billion. We spend more than 10 times what Russia spends on their defense. And we have NATO. We have 31 countries now in NATO. We have 31 allies in NATO all around Russia. And there's this boogeyman in Russia. Russia's going to be able to do something to us.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's what I say. I'm like, why are we having this thing with them? Are we worried? Like, are the Russians going to be like sending ships on the shores and coming and attacking us? Well, that's the thing. They're not. They have what, 8 military bases or whatever it is in the world. Like, I mean, it's absurd.
But that's also the thing. We'll finish the video in a second. But that's the thing about being a Marine and being in there and understanding that the soldiers don't mean anything. You're just collateral damage. That's all it is. At the end of the day, it's Lockheed Martin, it's General Dynamics, it's Boeing, it's Raytheon, it's any of those mega corporations that stand to profit tens of billions of dollars anytime there's a conflict going on. And someone brought this up the other day. I forget which channel it was, but they basically said, yeah, there's a reason why Biden got us out of Afghanistan in the fashion that he did. It's because got to rush into the next fight. We got something else we got to get to now.
They're very busy.
Never ends. Never ends. All right. And this is why. So for those of you who ever wonder how the Ukraine-Russia conflict started.
Right. It didn't come out of nowhere.
Didn't come out of nowhere.
People love to think that all of a sudden Putin invaded Ukraine.
Because he just felt like it
felt like it one day. We had no knowledge. There was no agreements that were violated, like the Minsk agreements. Like there was nothing, right? Like nothing was there. He just one day decided he's going to conquer Ukraine. And that's the message that they're sort of putting out there. And people that even do the modicum of research know this isn't true.
Yep.
We overthrew the Ukrainian government, the CIA, Nuland, the Deputy Secretary of State of Political Affairs at the time. We overthrew the duly elected president in Ukraine at that time. What Russia did to counteract that was they took over Crimea. And how did they take over Crimea? A lot of people, we remember the Obama line in the sand and all that, right? No, people in Crimea voted to be annexed from Ukraine. They went to the ballot and they voted. And people will say, well, Russians rig elections. Okay. Well, a year later, Gallup went in there and polled the Crimeans and said, are you guys happier under Russia or Ukraine? 95% of them said they are better off under Russia. They polled them 5 years later and they had the same numbers. And when you go back and look, if you watch, I don't know if you guys watch this or not, but when you watch Tucker Carlson, when he interviewed Putin, one of the things that Putin says in there is, I didn't start this war. Ukraine started this war a long time ago. And if you go back to 2015, 2016, 2017, Ukraine has been shelling their own citizens, which are Russian, typically Russian ethnicities. They've been shelling them this whole time, 20,000 dead before Russia even, began to stage troops in Belgrade. So this has been a long thing coming, and it is, I would say it's probably about 80, 90% America's fault. And I hate saying that because I'm an American, but, I think it was Mark Twain that says a patriot loves his country always, but his government when it deserves it. And our government does not deserve it right now.
No, they've been definitely wrong on Ukraine, but we know there's all sorts of ulterior motives and stuff. And I'll give a shout out to Medea Benjamin's book on Ukraine because it's actually quite good. It's short and sweet, but it talks the background of what you're talking about. And that's what people don't understand. The parts of Ukraine that Russia seeks to annex are the people that voted to be with them. That's what people are saying. Like, and they've been internally fighting. And from what you're saying, that to me sounds like almost like an ethnic cleansing on the part of Ukraine against the eastern, Russian portion of their citizens. And so that is something that people are not knowing. And I knew there was like conflict there between the Russian, like the people that wanted to be with Russia and the Ukrainians. But it's not so simple as Vladimir Putin just decided one day, I'm going to take over Ukraine. And that's how it's painted here.
All right, let's finish it.
German border. Many of those who then pursue the perilous path to peace are held up at NATO's borders, drowned in the Mediterranean, the world's largest graveyard, or disappeared into concentration camps funded by NATO member states across northern Africa. From the major US post-war military treaties, only NATO remains. SEATO and CENTO are no more. One was disbanded when the US was defeated by the revolutionary forces in Vietnam, and the other after the Iranian Revolution. Yet NATO persists, not least because it's proven its repeated willingness to use overwhelming military violence against its adversaries. Now, having expanded as far east as it can go in Europe, NATO has set its sights on the world. NATO's recent strategic concept referred to Africa and the Middle East as its southern neighborhood, And at its 2023 summit in Vilnius, NATO issued a communique that doubled down on the organization's strategic posture outlined previously. China's stated ambitions challenge NATO's interests, security, and values, necessitating a NATO pivot from the Atlantic to the Pacific. It has become imperative to challenge its violent mission and dismantle the war machine. This is how we prevent World War III.
She's really good.
She's not wrong.
No, she's not.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting. So we also agree that NATO should not even exist anymore.
I mean, yes.
Why do we need NATO?
No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Wow.
What James Baker said, not an inch further to the east, you know, and here we are. That was when I think that NATO was 19 countries, and now we're, you know, up well beyond that. And we're on Russia's border. I mean, what would we do if Russia, you know, formed a military alliance with Mexico?
Yeah.
I mean, we saw what happened with the Cuban Missile Crisis, you know, just the threat of that. And we were like ready to go to World War III back then. Yeah, I'm with you guys on that. I think that our foreign policy has been pretty shitty. You know, you look at, you really got to dive into Operation Gladio. Anytime you see something now I'm
going to have to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. Anytime you see like something like this pop off where, you know, you have, you know, a right versus left sector fighting in a foreign country, especially one that's not necessarily a NATO member, but one that is on the brink of, you know, some sort of a transition, whether it's, you know, maybe like the AfD party in Germany, like they talked about in that video in Italy back in the 60s and 70s. Yeah, it's just Gladio's, it'll open up your mind to a lot of things.
Yeah.
This is what we love our audience and we appreciate them. But this also gets back to this whole idea of, you know,
it
doesn't mean that we support Putin. And it doesn't mean that we don't support the Ukrainian people. But you can't, as an American, look at what's going on and, quite frankly, take anything as truth from our media industrial complex that has a financial incentive for this to go on for as long as humanly possible.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.